First impressions can be deceiving, and sometimes the person you dismiss as unremarkable turns out to be the most extraordinary person you'll ever meet. This is the story of Duke Adrian Blackthorne, who was forced into an arranged marriage with a woman he'd never met. A woman described to him as plain, boring, and utterly beneath his station. A woman he decided to ignore from the moment the contract was signed. This is not a love story that starts with love. It starts with contempt, with prejudice, with a duke so arrogant he believed he already knew everything about the woman forced to marry him based on malicious gossip and deliberate lies. It starts with Eleanor Ashford, a young woman trapped in an impossible situation, forced to marry a man who had already decided she wasn't worth his time. But Eleanor had secrets. In the world of nobility, arranged marriages are common. Strategic alliances between families, mergers of wealth and power. Love is optional. Respect is negotiable. But compatibility, that's considered a bonus, not a requirement. So when the Duke of Ravenswood was informed he would marry Lady Eleanor Ashford to save her family from financial ruin and secure a political alliance, he didn't question it. He simply wanted to know what she looked like, what she could offer, whether she'd be an embarrassment, and the reports he received were devastating for Eleanor, and ultimately for him. They said she was plain, unremarkable, lacking in social graces, poorly educated, shy to the point of being nearly mute. They said she had no accomplishments worth mentioning, couldn't dance, couldn't sing, couldn't hold a conversation. They said she'd be a burden, an embarrassment at court, a duchess who would drag down the Ravenswood name. They said all of this, and Adrian believed every word. Why wouldn't he? The reports came from reliable sources, from people who knew her, or claimed to. What Adrian didn't know was that every single report had been deliberately falsified by someone who wanted Eleanor to fail. That someone was Lady Cordelia Ashton. Beautiful, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. Cordelia had wanted to be the Duchess of Ravenswood herself, had positioned herself as the perfect candidate. But then Eleanor's father, desperate to save his family, had offered a massive dowry and political connections Adrian's family needed. And suddenly, the plain, unremarkable Eleanor Ashford was chosen over the magnificent Cordelia Ashton. Cordelia's revenge was subtle but devastating. She spread vicious lies about Eleanor, made sure every report that reached Adrian painted Eleanor as completely unsuitable. And Adrian, arrogant enough to believe gossip over giving his bride a fair chance, fell for every lie. Today we're going to tell you what happened when prejudice met reality, when arrogance met humility, when lies met truth. We're going to tell you about the engagement ball where Adrian planned to humiliate Eleanor publicly, to make it clear she would be his wife in name only, and how Eleanor, who had been hiding her true self for years, decided that one night, just one unforgettable night, she would show everyone who she really was, and make the Duke of Ravenswood regret every assumption he'd ever made. This is the story of an entrance that changed everything. Let's begin. 6 weeks before the engagement ball, Adrian Blackthorne sat in his study reading the marriage contract his solicitors had prepared. The terms were straightforward. He would marry Eleanor Ashford within 3 months. Her family would provide a dowry of £50,000 and support for Adrian's political ambitions in Parliament. In exchange, the Ashford family would be saved from bankruptcy and restored to social standing. It was a business transaction, nothing more. Adrian signed without hesitation. He didn't even ask to meet Eleanor first. Why bother? He'd already decided she was irrelevant to his life beyond her family's money and connections. That evening, Adrian attended a dinner party at Lady Cordelia Ashton's townhouse. Cordelia was the acknowledged beauty of the season, witty and charming, everything Adrian had been raised to expect in a duchess. They'd had an understanding, nothing official, but society assumed they'd eventually marry. So when Cordelia heard about Adrian's engagement to Eleanor, she was devastated, but she hid it well. She congratulated Adrian with a perfect smile. And then, over brandy, she began her campaign of destruction. "Eleanor Ashford," Cordelia said thoughtfully. "Such an interesting choice. Have you met her?" Adrian shook his head. "Not yet. The wedding is arranged. Meeting seemed unnecessary." Cordelia's laugh was light, musical, and full of poison. How very modern of you. Though I suppose it's wise not to meet her beforehand. Might make it harder to go through with the wedding. Adrian's attention sharpened. What do you mean? Cordelia lowered her voice as if sharing a confidence. My dear Adrian, Eleanor Ashford is... Well, let's just say she's not what one expects in a duchess. I've known her since childhood. Sweet girl, really, but terribly plain. No social graces whatsoever. She barely speaks in company. When she does, it's to say something awkward and inappropriate. Her education is abysmal. She can't dance without stepping on toes. Adrian felt cold dread settling in his stomach. Surely she has some accomplishments. Cordelia's expression was pitying. I wish I could say she did, but honestly, Adrian, the kindest thing I can tell you is that Eleanor is unremarkable in every possible way. She'll be a duchess who embarrasses you at every social function, who can't hold her own in conversation with your peers. Who will make you a laughingstock? She paused. I'm only telling you this as a friend, so you can prepare yourself. Perhaps you can keep her tucked away in the country. Let her manage the estate while you maintain your life in London. Adrian left that dinner convinced he'd made a terrible mistake. Over the following weeks, he made discreet inquiries about Eleanor. Every response confirmed Cordelia's assessment. Lady Margaret, Adrian's sister, reported that Eleanor had been painfully shy at the few events she'd attended. Lord Christopher mentioned hearing she was academically challenged. Even Adrian's mother, the Dowager Duchess, sighed when Adrian mentioned his bride. The Ashford girl. Adrian, I hope you know what you're doing. She's not Duchess material. What none of them knew was that all their information came from the same source, Cordelia, who had spent years carefully cultivating Eleanor's reputation as a failure. The truth about Eleanor Ashford was very different. She was 22 years old, the only child of the Earl of Ashford. Her father had been a brilliant diplomat until bad investments and scheming rivals bankrupted him. Eleanor had grown up in a household that valued education, art, and intellect. She spoke 4 languages fluently. She was an accomplished pianist and singer. She'd studied literature, philosophy, and politics with private tutors. She was witty, charming, and beautiful when she chose to be. But for the past 3 years, Eleanor had been hiding all of that, deliberately, and she had very good reasons why. When Eleanor was 19, she was courted by Lord Marcus Hartley, a charming young baron. Eleanor fell deeply in love. She showed him every part of herself, her intelligence, her humor, her passion for music and debate. Marcus seemed enchanted, right until the moment he proposed to someone else, Lady Helena Pierce, a woman with a larger dowry and better connections. When Eleanor, heartbroken, asked him why, Marcus was brutally honest. You're too much, Eleanor. Too smart, too opinionated, too talented. Men don't want wives who overshadow them. Helena knows her place. You never would. Those words destroyed something in Eleanor. She vowed never to be too much again. From that moment, Eleanor became invisible. She stopped speaking in company, stopped playing piano at social gatherings, stopped demonstrating any of her accomplishments. She dressed plainly, styled her hair severely, made herself as unremarkable as possible, because if being herself meant rejection, then she would simply not be herself. Her father was bewildered. Her few friends were concerned, but Eleanor was resolute. She would be what society wanted, quiet, plain, forgettable, and it worked. Men stopped noticing her. Society dismissed her. She became exactly what she'd set out to be, invisible. Until her father's financial crisis forced her into an arranged marriage with the Duke of Ravenswood. When Eleanor's father told her about the engagement, she felt numb. He's never met you, her father said apologetically. He doesn't require a meeting before the wedding. It's purely a business arrangement. Eleanor nodded mechanically. Of course it was. Why would the great Duke of Ravenswood want to meet his plain, boring bride? She was just a transaction, a means to an end. Fine. She'd been invisible for 3 years. She could be invisible a little longer. Except, something about the dismissal stung. The arrogance of marrying someone without even meeting them. The assumption that she wasn't worth his time. Slowly, a different feeling began to replace the numbness. Anger. 2 weeks before the engagement ball, the event where their betrothal would be formally announced to society, Eleanor received a letter from the Duke's secretary. Not even from Adrian himself. The letter outlined expectations. Eleanor would attend the ball, be presented to society, and conduct herself with appropriate modesty. She would not dance more than once with any gentleman except the Duke. She would not call attention to herself. She would remember that she represented the Ravenswood name now, and any embarrassment she caused would reflect poorly on his grace. The letter was cold, formal, and made Eleanor feel like a servant receiving instructions from a master. Her anger crystallized into determination. Eleanor sat in her room staring at her reflection. For 3 years she'd hidden herself, made herself small, forgettable. And what had it gotten her? She was still being judged, still being dismissed, still being treated as less than. The Duke of Ravenswood had never even met her, yet he'd already decided she was an embarrassment waiting to happen. Well, Eleanor was done being invisible, done accepting other people's low expectations. If she was going to be trapped in this marriage anyway, if she was going to spend her life as the Duchess of Ravenswood, then she was going to do it on her terms, and she was going to make sure the Duke regretted every assumption he'd ever made about her. Eleanor called for her lady's maid. "Sarah, I need your help. For the engagement ball, I want to look unforgettable." Sarah's eyes widened. For years, she'd watched Eleanor deliberately make herself plain. "Miss Eleanor, do you mean—" Eleanor smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Sarah had seen in 3 years. "Yes. I mean, it's time everyone remembered who I really am. Get me the best modiste in London. Spare no expense. My father says the Duke's dowry has already been paid, so technically, I'm spending my future husband's money. Might as well make it count." Sarah's smile was gleeful. "Oh, Miss Eleanor, His Grace has no idea what he's in for." Meanwhile, Adrian was preparing for the engagement ball with grim resignation. He'd already decided how the evening would go. Eleanor would arrive looking as plain and awkward as he'd been led to expect. He'd greet her formally, fulfill his social obligations, and then spend the rest of the evening with his actual friends, making it clear to society that while he was marrying Eleanor Ashford for her money, he had no intention of actually being her husband in any meaningful way. It was cruel, yes. But Adrian felt justified. He was sacrificing his chance at a love match. The least Eleanor could do was stay out of his way. The morning of the ball, Lady Cordelia visited Adrian at his townhouse. She was dressed exquisitely in rose silk, looking every inch the Duchess she'd hoped to become. "Adrian," she greeted him warmly, "I wanted to check on you before tonight's ordeal." Adrian smiled wryly. "Is it that obvious I'm dreading it?" Cordelia sat gracefully. "Of course you are. Anyone would dread being shackled to Eleanor Ashford. But Adrian, I want to give you some advice. Be kind to her tonight. I know it's tempting to let your disappointment show, but the poor girl can't help being what she is. Make the best of an unfortunate situation." Her words were kind. Her smile was sympathetic, and every word was calculated poison. Adrian's sister Margaret arrived shortly after Cordelia left. "Have you met her yet?" Margaret asked. "Your bride?" Adrian shook his head. "She arrives this evening for the ball. That will be our first meeting." Margaret looked concerned. "Adrian, that seems unwise. What if she's even worse than the reports suggest? What if she can't even get through the evening without embarrassing herself?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Then I'll manage the situation. Keep her away from important guests. Minimize the damage." Margaret studied her brother. "You've already decided to hate her, haven't you? Without even meeting her." Adrian didn't deny it. "I've decided to have realistic expectations. That's different." Lord Christopher found Adrian in the study an hour before the ball. "Brother, I need to say something. You're not going to like it." Adrian looked up from his papers. "What?" Christopher took a breath. "I think you're being unfair to Lady Eleanor. You've condemned her based on gossip without giving her a chance to prove herself." Adrian's expression hardened. "It's not gossip, Christopher. It's consistent reports from multiple reliable sources. Everyone who knows her says the same things." Christopher shook his head. "Have you noticed that all those sources are friends with Cordelia Ashton, the woman who wanted to marry you herself? Doesn't that seem suspicious?" Adrian dismissed the concern. "You're being paranoid." But Christopher persisted. "Am I? Adrian, think about it. Cordelia has every reason to want Eleanor to fail. every reason to paint her in the worst possible light, and yet you've accepted every negative thing she's said without question. Adrian stood abruptly. Enough. I don't have time for conspiracy theories. The ball starts in an hour. Eleanor will arrive. I'll meet her, and we'll see if your suspicions or my information is correct. My money is on my information. Christopher sighed. I hope you're wrong for both your sakes, because if you treat her poorly tonight based on lies, she won't forgive you, and you won't forgive yourself. Adrian said nothing. He'd already made up his mind. Ravenswood House was magnificent. Adrian's London estate had been transformed for the engagement ball. Crystal chandeliers glittered. Flowers from the Duke's greenhouses adorned every surface. String orchestras tuned their instruments. 500 guests had been invited, every important noble in England. The ballroom could accommodate them all easily. It was designed to showcase the Ravenswood wealth and power, to demonstrate that Adrian was still one of the most eligible, powerful men in the kingdom, even if his bride was disappointing. The stage was set. The guests would arrive within the hour, and somewhere in London, Eleanor Ashford was preparing to make her entrance. Adrian stood in the receiving room, adjusting his formal attire. He looked magnificent in black and silver, the Ravenswood crest embroidered in silver thread on his jacket. He was 30 years old, handsome, wealthy, and powerful. He could have had any woman in England. Instead, he was bound to Eleanor Ashford, a woman he'd never met but already resented. His mother joined him. Eleanor should arrive any moment, the dowager said. Remember, Adrian, whatever she looks like, however awkward she is, you must be gracious. Our family's reputation depends on this alliance. Adrian nodded tersely. I'll be civil. The dowager's lips thinned. Be more than civil. Be kind. The girl can't help being born unremarkable. A footman entered. Your Grace, Lady Eleanor Ashford's carriage has arrived. Adrian's stomach tightened. This was it. The moment he'd meet the woman he'd be shackled to for life. He straightened his shoulders, arranged his expression into polite neutrality, and prepared to greet his disappointing bride. The dowager stood beside him. Margaret and Christopher flanked them. The Blackthorne family, united in receiving the woman who would join their ranks. The doors opened. Adrian looked toward the entrance, his expression carefully controlled. And then he saw her. And everything he thought he knew shattered into pieces. Eleanor Ashford stood in the doorway, and she was magnificent, breathtaking, utterly impossibly beautiful. She wore a gown of deep sapphire silk that hugged her figure before flowing to the floor like water. The neckline was modest but elegant, showing her graceful neck and collarbones. The fabric shimmered with every slight movement. Her dark auburn hair was arranged in an elaborate style, woven with silver ribbons and tiny diamonds that caught the light. Her face. God, her face. Delicate features, high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes the color of emeralds that sparkled with intelligence and something else. Challenge. She was looking directly at Adrian, and her slight smile said, Surprised? Adrian couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process what he was seeing. This couldn't be Eleanor Ashford. Plain, boring, unremarkable Eleanor. This woman looked like she'd stepped out of a painting, like a goddess deciding to grace mortals with her presence. She moved into the room with perfect grace, her posture impeccable, her movements confident. Nothing shy or awkward about her. She stopped before Adrian and executed a curtsy so perfect it could have been choreographed. When she rose, she met his eyes directly. No downcast gaze, no timid uncertainty, just calm, amused confidence. Your Grace, she said. Her voice was melodious, clear, educated. I'm Eleanor Ashford. I believe we're to be married. Adrian finally found his voice. Lady Eleanor, welcome to Ravenswood House. He sounded like an idiot. He knew he sounded like an idiot, but he couldn't form coherent thoughts. This was Eleanor? Eleanor curtsied to the dowager. Your Grace, thank you for hosting this evening. To Margaret. Lady Margaret, I've heard much about you. To Christopher. Lord Christopher, a pleasure. Each greeting was perfect, warm but not over-familiar, respectful but not obsequious. This was not the socially inept disaster Adrian had been led to expect. This was a woman completely comfortable in high society. The dowager looked as shocked as Adrian felt. "Lady Eleanor, you look lovely." Eleanor's smile was knowing. "Thank you, Your Grace. I had hoped to make a good first impression." Margaret recovered first. "Lady Eleanor, your gown is exquisite. May I ask who created it?" Eleanor's expression turned mischievous. "Madame Laurent. I believe she usually dresses Lady Cordelia Ashton. I was fortunate she had time to accommodate me on such short notice." The barb was subtle but unmistakable. Eleanor had engaged the most exclusive modiste in London, Cordelia's modiste, and turned herself into perfection. Margaret's lips twitched with something that might have been admiration. "Well, she's outdone herself." Christopher stepped forward, bowing over Eleanor's hand. "Lady Eleanor, welcome to the family. I think you and I are going to get along very well." Eleanor smiled warmly at him. "I hope so, Lord Christopher." Adrian was still staring. He couldn't help it. Everything he'd been told about Eleanor was wrong, not just slightly wrong, completely, utterly, catastrophically wrong. She wasn't plain. She was stunning. She wasn't awkward. She moved with the grace of a dancer. She wasn't socially inept. She'd greeted his family with perfect etiquette. Who the hell was this woman? And why had everyone lied to him about her? Eleanor turned back to Adrian, one eyebrow raised elegantly. "Your Grace, you seem surprised. Is something wrong?" Adrian realized he was still staring and forced himself to speak. "No, nothing wrong. I was just—" "You're not what I expected." Eleanor's smile turned sharp. "No, I'm sure I'm not." Before Adrian could respond, guests began arriving. The engagement ball was beginning. Adrian offered Eleanor his arm, and she took it with easy confidence. They moved to the ballroom entrance to greet guests together. As hosts, they would receive everyone personally. Adrian was acutely aware of Eleanor beside him, of her light perfume, something floral and expensive, of the whispers that started the moment guests saw her. "Who is that?" "That's Lady Eleanor Ashford. I was told she was plain." "Whoever told you that was blind." Adrian felt something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. He'd planned to be cold to Eleanor, to make it clear she was beneath him. But standing beside her now, radiant and composed, he was the one who felt inadequate. Lady Cordelia arrived an hour into the receiving line. She looked beautiful as always in rose silk and diamonds, but next to Eleanor's sapphire elegance, the rose suddenly seemed overdone, too much, trying too hard. Cordelia's eyes widened when she saw Eleanor. Shock, disbelief, and rage flickered across her face before she controlled her expression. "Lady Eleanor," Cordelia said, her voice tight. "What a transformation. I hardly recognized you." Eleanor's smile was serene. "Lady Cordelia, how kind of you to attend. I know how difficult this must be for you." The implication was clear. Difficult because Cordelia had wanted to be the one standing in Eleanor's place. Cordelia's smile became brittle. "Not at all. I'm thrilled for you both." After Cordelia moved on, Adrian leaned close to Eleanor. "That was pointed." Eleanor glanced at him. "Was it? I thought I was being gracious." Adrian studied her. "You're not who I expected at all." Eleanor's expression was unreadable. "No, I gathered that from your letter, the one instructing me not to embarrass you, not to call attention to myself, to remember I represent the Ravenswood name now." Her voice was light, but Adrian heard the steel underneath. He felt heat rise to his face. "Eleanor, Your Grace," she interrupted smoothly. "More guests are arriving. We should attend to them." She was right. But Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that he'd made a terrible mistake, and the evening had only just begun. Once all the guests had been received, the ball proper began. Adrian was expected to open the dancing with Eleanor. It was tradition. He offered his hand, and Eleanor took it gracefully. As they moved to the center of the floor, Adrian was hyper-aware of every eye watching them, judging her. The orchestra began a waltz. Adrian placed his hand at Eleanor's waist, took her other hand, and they began to move. And God help him, she danced like a dream. Perfect timing, perfect form, following his lead effortlessly. Not a single misstep. Adrian's mind raced. Cordelia had said Eleanor couldn't dance without stepping on toes. That was a lie. What else had been lies? "You dance well," Adrian said, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. Eleanor's eyes met his. "Did you expect me to step all over your feet?" Adrian had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was told you were not accomplished in dancing." Eleanor's expression was cool. "You were told many things about me, weren't you? All of them unflattering, and you believed them without ever meeting me, without giving me a chance to prove otherwise." Adrian felt defensive. The reports came from reliable sources. Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "Reliable? Your Grace, your reliable sources were all friends with Lady Cordelia Ashton, the woman who wanted to marry you herself. Did that never strike you as suspicious?" Adrian faltered slightly in the dance. Christopher had said the same thing earlier. "You're suggesting Cordelia deliberately lied about you?" Eleanor's voice was measured. "I'm suggesting that a woman scorned might have motivation to paint her rival in the worst possible light. And I'm noting that you accepted those lies without question, without even meeting me to form your own opinion." Adrian felt anger flash. "If the reports were false, why didn't you correct them? Why did you let everyone think you were plain and boring?" Eleanor's eyes blazed. "Because I chose to be underestimated. I chose to hide myself. What I didn't choose was to be dismissed by my future husband without even a meeting. That, Your Grace, was your decision." The waltz ended. They stepped apart, and Eleanor curtsied. Adrian bowed. Applause rippled through the ballroom. They'd looked perfect together, but the tension between them was palpable. Adrian knew he needed to say something, to apologize, but pride held him back. Eleanor moved away to join a group of young ladies who'd approached her eagerly. Adrian watched as she laughed with them, completely at ease. How had he gotten everything so wrong? Lord Christopher appeared at his elbow. "So, still think your information was accurate?" Adrian didn't answer. He couldn't. He was watching Eleanor charm a group of influential matrons with what appeared to be effortless grace. Who was this woman? The evening continued. Eleanor was most remarkable. She conversed intelligently with politicians, charmed dowagers, and drew admiring glances from every man in the room. Adrian found himself watching her constantly, noting how she tilted her head when listening intently, how her smile transformed her face from beautiful to luminous, how she moved through the ballroom like she owned it. This wasn't a woman hiding herself anymore. This was a woman who had decided to be seen. And Adrian couldn't look away. But every time he tried to approach her, to speak with her privately, she gracefully evaded him, speaking to other guests, accepting dance invitations from eligible gentlemen, making it clear she wasn't interested in his attention. After her third dance with another man, Adrian's jealousy, because that's what it was, he admitted, reached a breaking point. He intercepted Eleanor as she left the dance floor. "We need to talk." Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "Do we? I thought I was supposed to not call attention to myself. Stay out of your way, not embarrass the Ravenswood name. I'm doing exactly what you asked." Adrian gritted his teeth. "That letter was written before I met you." Eleanor's expression was cold. "Yes. Before you met me, but after you decided I was worthless. Tell me, Your Grace, what's changed? The fact that I'm not as ugly as you hoped? The fact that I can hold a conversation without embarrassing myself? Is that all it takes to earn your attention?" Adrian felt like he'd been slapped. "That's not fair." Eleanor stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Fair? You judged me without meeting me. You believed vicious gossip without questioning its source. You planned to humiliate me tonight by ignoring me, making it clear I was beneath you. Don't think I don't know. Your brother warned me. He's a good man, by the way. Much better than you." Adrian reeled. "Christopher spoke to you?" Eleanor smiled without warmth. "He visited me 3 days ago, told me everything. Your plans for tonight, your belief that I was an embarrassment, your intention to treat me as a wife in name only. So I decided to make different plans, Front." Adrian felt cold. "What kind of plans?" Eleanor's eyes glittered. "To show you and everyone else exactly who I am, to prove that your assumptions were catastrophically wrong, and to make it very clear that if you think I'm going to be a meek, ignored wife, tucked away in the country while you gallivant around London, you're delusional." Adrian's voice came out hoarse. "Eleanor, I made a mistake, I see that now, but—" "But nothing," Eleanor interrupted. "You made your choice before you met me. Now I'm making mine. Excuse me. I promised Lord Pembroke this dance." She swept away, leaving Adrian standing alone in the middle of the ballroom, feeling like the biggest fool in England. Adrian retreated to the balcony for air. He found Lord Christopher already there. "Rough evening?" Christopher asked. Adrian laughed bitterly. "That's an understatement. Christopher, I've been an ass." Christopher didn't disagree. "Yes, you have. I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen." Adrian ran a hand through his hair. "Everything I was told about Eleanor was wrong. Every single thing. She's not plain. She's not boring. She's not socially inept. She's extraordinary." Christopher nodded. "Yes, she is. I figured that out after one conversation with her. Took you an entire ball." Adrian turned to his brother. "How do I fix this?" "She hates me. She has every right to hate me." Christopher considered. "You grovel. You apologize sincerely and repeatedly. You prove through actions, not words, that you see her value, and you pray she's more forgiving than you deserve." Adrian looked back through the windows at Eleanor, who was now surrounded by admirers. "What if she won't forgive me?" Christopher's expression was serious. "Then you'll spend your marriage exactly as you planned, married in name only. Except now, instead of it being your choice, it'll be hers. You'll watch her live her life, brilliant and beautiful, and utterly out of your reach, because you were too arrogant to give her a fair chance from the beginning." Adrian felt those words like a knife. Christopher was right, and Adrian had done this to himself. Adrian returned to the ballroom determined to speak with Eleanor properly, to apologize, to start over. But before he could reach her, Lady Cordelia intercepted him. "Adrian, can we speak? Privately." Her voice was urgent. Against his better judgment, Adrian followed her to a small study off the main hall. Cordelia closed the door. "Adrian, I need to apologize. Everything I told you about Eleanor. I exaggerated, I was jealous, I wanted you for myself. And when you chose her, I tried to sabotage her. I'm so sorry." Adrian stared at her. She was admitting it, admitting she'd lied deliberately, destroyed Eleanor's reputation out of spite. "You cost me." He couldn't finish. Cordelia looked stricken. "I know. I'm sorry." Adrian's voice was ice. "Sorry isn't enough, Cordelia. You deliberately ruined any chance Eleanor and I had at a civil relationship. You painted her as worthless, and I believed you. I treated my future wife with contempt, based on your lies. Do you understand what you've done?" Cordelia's expression turned calculating. "But Adrian, you don't need Eleanor." "Not really. The marriage is contracted, yes, but we could still—" She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest. Adrian stepped back sharply. "Are you insane? Even if I wanted you, which I don't, you just admitted to deliberately sabotaging my engagement. Why would I trust you about anything?" Cordelia's face flushed with humiliation. "I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix it." Adrian's voice was ice. "Sorry isn't enough, Cordelia. You deliberately ruined any chance Eleanor and I had at a civil relationship. You painted her as worthless, and I believed you. I treated my future wife with contempt based on your lies. Do you understand what you've done?" Cordelia's expression turned calculating. "But Adrian, you don't need Eleanor. Not really. The marriage is contracted, yes. But you could still— we could still—" She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest. Adrian stepped back sharply. "Are you insane? Even if I wanted you, which I don't, you just admitted to deliberately sabotaging my engagement. Why would I trust you about anything?" Cordelia's face flushed with humiliation. "I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix it." "You're trying to manipulate me again," Adrian said coldly. "You admit to lying, apologize, and then immediately suggest I betray my betrothed with you. That's not remorse. That's strategy." He opened the door. "We're done, Cordelia. You're no longer welcome in my home or my life. If you come near Eleanor again, if you spread any more lies about her, I will destroy your family's reputation so thoroughly, you'll never show your face in society again. Am I clear?" Cordelia's expression turned ugly. "You'll regret this, Adrian. Eleanor's not what she appears. This whole transformation is an act. Eventually, you'll see that." Adrian smiled without humor. "The only act I'm concerned about is the one you've been performing. Get out." After Cordelia left, Adrian stood alone in the study, processing everything. Cordelia had admitted to lying, to sabotaging Eleanor, which meant every awful thing Adrian believed about his future wife had been deliberate manipulation. He'd been played. And Eleanor had every right to despise him. He'd dismissed her, planned to humiliate her, treated her as beneath him, all based on lies he'd been too arrogant to question. Adrian had always prided himself on being a good judge of character, but in this, the most important judgment he'd made, he'd been completely, catastrophically wrong. The question now was, could he make it right? Or had he destroyed any possibility of a real marriage before it even began? Adrian returned to the ballroom. The evening was reaching its pinnacle. In a few minutes, Adrian would be expected to make a formal announcement of the engagement, to toast Eleanor before the assembled guests, to present her as his future duchess. He found Eleanor near the orchestra, laughing at something a young earl said. Her face was radiant. She looked happy, happier than she'd looked any time she was speaking to Adrian. That realization hurt more than Adrian expected. He'd had the chance to make her smile like that, but he'd squandered it with prejudice and arrogance. Now he had to stand before 500 guests and pretend everything was perfect, when in reality, he'd already lost her. The orchestra fell silent. Adrian stepped onto the small platform at the end of the ballroom. All eyes turned to him. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading for weeks. The formal announcement of his engagement to a woman he'd believed would embarrass him. Except now, looking at Eleanor standing beautiful and composed among the guests, Adrian realized the only person who should be embarrassed was himself. He took a breath and began. "My lords and ladies, thank you for joining us tonight. I've gathered you here to announce my engagement to Lady Eleanor Ashford, daughter of the Earl of Ashford. Eleanor, would you join me, please?" Eleanor moved through the crowd with perfect grace. She climbed the steps to stand beside him. Adrian looked at Eleanor, and something in her eyes stopped him. A challenge, a dare. She was waiting to see what he'd say, whether he'd go through with his original plan to give a cold, formal speech that made it clear this was a business arrangement, or whether he'd surprise her. Adrian made a decision. He abandoned the speech he'd prepared. When he spoke, the words came from something deeper, more honest. "When I agreed to this match," Adrian began, "I thought I knew what to expect. I thought I had all the information. I thought I understood who my future wife would be. I was wrong. Completely, utterly, humiliatingly wrong." A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't the typical engagement announcement. Adrian continued, his eyes never leaving Eleanor's face. "I didn't meet Eleanor before tonight. I didn't ask to meet her. I simply accepted reports from people I thought were reliable. Those reports painted a picture of a woman who was less than extraordinary. And I believed them. I believed them because I was arrogant, because I assumed I knew better, because I didn't think to question information that confirmed my worst assumptions." Eleanor's expression was unreadable. Adrian pressed on. "Tonight I met Eleanor for the first time, and I discovered that every single thing I'd been told about her was false. She's not plain, she's breathtaking. She's not socially awkward, she's the most graceful woman in this room. She's not unintelligent or uneducated," Adrian said, his voice growing stronger. "She's brilliant, sharp, witty. She speaks multiple languages. She dances beautifully. She can hold her own in conversation with anyone here. In short, she's everything I was told she wasn't, and the fault for not knowing that sooner lies entirely with me." The ballroom was completely silent now. 500 nobles hung on every word. This was unprecedented. A duke publicly admitting he'd wronged his betrothed. Adrian turned to fully face Eleanor. "Lady Eleanor, I owe you an apology. I judged you without meeting you. I believed lies about you without questioning them. I planned to treat you poorly tonight based on false information. I was wrong, completely wrong, and I'm sorry." Eleanor's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Your Grace, you're apologizing publicly, in front of 500 witnesses. That's brave. But here's what I need to know. Are you apologizing because I turned out to be beautiful and accomplished? Or are you apologizing because you realize you should have given me a fair chance regardless of what I looked like or how talented I was? Adrian continued, his voice raw with honesty. I realized that even if every lie I'd been told about you had been true, if you'd been plain, awkward, unremarkable, you still would have deserved better than I planned to give you. You would have deserved respect, kindness, a fair chance, not dismissal based on gossip. The problem wasn't the lies people told me. The problem was that I believed them without question, that I didn't think you were worth the effort of forming my own opinion. That, Eleanor, is what I'm truly sorry for. Not that I misjudged your beauty or talent, but that I didn't respect you enough as a person to give you a fair chance regardless of those things. Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. Do you mean that? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? Adrian reached for her hands. She didn't pull away. I mean it. Eleanor, you are extraordinary. But even if you weren't, even if you'd been exactly what I was told to expect, you would still have deserved better from me, because you're a person, my future wife, someone I should have honored from the beginning. And I didn't. That's my failure, one I hope to spend the rest of our marriage making up for. The ballroom erupted in applause, but Adrian only cared about Eleanor's response. She looked at him for a long moment, then, quietly, that was a very good apology. Adrian felt hope bloom. Does that mean you forgive me? Eleanor's smile was small but genuine. It means you're on the right path. Forgiveness isn't instantaneous, Your Grace. You hurt me with your assumptions, made me feel worthless before you'd even met me. That's not something I can forgive with a single apology, however eloquent. Adrian nodded. I understand. What can I do? Eleanor's eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. You can dance with me. Properly this time. Not as a duty, but because you want to. And you can spend the rest of this evening actually getting to know me, the real me. Not the version Cordelia invented or the version I'm showing tonight. The complicated real person underneath. Adrian offered his hand. I would be honored. They descended from the platform and moved to the dance floor. The orchestra began a new waltz. This time, when Adrian took Eleanor in his arms, it felt different. No longer a performance, no longer duty, something real. As they moved through the steps, Adrian spoke quietly. Tell me about the languages you speak. Eleanor looked surprised. You really want to know? Adrian nodded. I really want to know everything. Eleanor's expression softened. I escape from what? Adrian asked gently. Eleanor hesitated, then, from being dismissed, from being told I was too much, too smart, too opinionated, too ambitious for a woman. A man I loved once told me I'd never find a husband because I overshadowed men, that I needed to make myself smaller, so I did. For 3 years I hid everything that made me special, convinced myself that being invisible was safer than being rejected. Adrian's chest tightened. The man who told you that was an idiot. Eleanor laughed softly. Perhaps, but he wasn't wrong about society's expectations. Women who outshine their husbands are problems, threats. We're supposed to be decorative and agreeable, not challenging. Adrian's voice was fierce. Then society's expectations are wrong. Eleanor, I don't want a decorative wife who agrees with everything I say. That sounds boring as hell. I want a partner, someone who challenges me, makes me think, calls me out when I'm being an arrogant ass, which apparently I am quite frequently. Eleanor's laugh was more genuine this time. You're admitting you're arrogant? Adrian smiled ruefully. How could I not? You've thoroughly proven it tonight. I came into this evening convinced I knew exactly who you were, convinced I was superior in every way, and you've systematically demolished every assumption I made. If that's not a lesson in humility, I don't know what is. The waltz ended, but neither of them moved apart immediately. Adrian found himself reluctant to release Eleanor, to stop touching her. It was a strange feeling. He'd expected to endure this marriage, to tolerate his bride. But now, having actually met Eleanor, having seen her brilliance and strength, he wanted more. Wanted to know her, understand her, earn her respect, maybe even, eventually, her affection. But that would take time. and genuine effort. Not just pretty words at a ball. Eleanor stepped back, breaking the spell. "Your Grace." "Adrian," he corrected gently. "When we're alone, call me Adrian." Eleanor's eyes searched his face. "Adrian, we should attend to our guests. They're watching us rather intently." Adrian glanced around. Indeed, every eye in the ballroom was on them. The Duke's public apology had been unprecedented, scandalous, and utterly fascinating to society. By tomorrow morning, every scandal sheet in London would be discussing it. Adrian offered Eleanor his arm. "Let them watch, let them talk. I meant every word I said." They circulated through the ballroom together, and this time, Adrian paid attention. Watched as Eleanor conversed about politics with a Parliament member. Near midnight, Adrian and Eleanor found themselves on the balcony, escaping the heat and noise of the ballroom. The night air was cool. Stars glittered overhead. Eleanor leaned against the balustrade, looking out over the gardens. "This is a beautiful estate," she said softly. Adrian moved to stand beside her. "It will be yours soon, when we marry. Everything I have becomes yours." Eleanor glanced at him. "That's legally inaccurate," Adrian considered. "What if I had lawyers draw up documents giving you independent control of your dowry and any inheritance? It's possible. Unusual, but possible. Would that help you feel more secure in this marriage?" Eleanor stared at him. "You'd do that? Give me financial independence?" Adrian met her eyes. "Eleanor, I don't want you to feel trapped. This marriage was arranged. You didn't choose it any more than I did. The least I can do is ensure you have resources and autonomy. That you're not utterly dependent on me for everything." Eleanor's eyes glistened. "That's remarkably decent of you." Adrian smiled wryly. "I'm trying to make up for being remarkably indecent earlier. I have a lot of ground to cover." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "Then, Adrian, can I ask you something? Why did you believe the lies about me so readily? Was it just arrogance, or was there something else?" Adrian sighed. "Honestly, I think part of me wanted to believe them. I was angry about the arranged marriage, angry I couldn't choose my own bride. If you were as awful as the report suggested, then I'd feel justified in resenting you, in treating you poorly. I could be the wronged party, the noble Duke forced to marry beneath him." He paused. "It was easier to make you the villain than to accept that we're both just people trapped in a situation neither of us wanted." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I understand that, more than you might think. I did something similar with you. I decided you were an arrogant, cruel man before I met you, based on that letter you sent, based on the reports I heard about your plans for tonight. I made you into a villain in my head. It was easier than admitting I was terrified of this marriage, of being trapped with a stranger for the rest of my life." She looked at Adrian. "We both made assumptions. The difference is I had actual evidence of your contempt. You had lies." Adrian's chest tightened. "That doesn't make my assumptions any better. If anything, it makes them worse. I had no justification." Eleanor turned to face him fully. "So where do we go from here? We're still getting married in 3 weeks. We're still bound by this arrangement. But now we've established that we both made mistakes, that we both came into this with prejudice. How do we move forward?" Adrian considered carefully. "We start over. Clean slate. I don't expect you to forget what happened tonight, the good or the bad, but I'd like permission to court you properly, to get to know you, to let you get to know me. We have 3 weeks before the wedding. Let's use them to build something real, not based on obligation or contracts, but on genuine connection." Eleanor studied him. "And if we can't build that connection? If we're simply incompatible?" Adrian's voice was honest. "Then we'll have a marriage of convenience, respectful, civil. We'll be partners in managing estates and raising whatever children we have. It won't be a love match, but it won't be miserable either. I'll never mistreat you, Eleanor. Never dismiss you or make you feel less than you are. Even if we're not compatible romantically, I'll respect you as a person, as my Duchess, as the mother of my future children." Eleanor seemed to consider this. Finally, she extended her hand. "All right, Adrian Blackthorne. Let's start over. Court me properly." Show me that the man who apologized tonight is real. Show me I'm not making a terrible mistake by giving you a second chance. Adrian took her hand, bringing it to his lips. Thank you. They returned to the ballroom together. The evening was winding down. Guests were beginning to depart, offering congratulations and promises to attend the wedding. The dowager approached Adrian and Eleanor. That was quite a speech, Adrian. Her tone was unreadable. Adrian braced himself. Mother, I meant every word. The dowager looked at Eleanor. Lady Eleanor, I must apologize. I also believed the rumors about you. I didn't question them, and I was wrong. You are clearly a remarkable young woman. I hope you can forgive an old woman's prejudice. Eleanor curtsied. Your Grace, I understand. Cordelia's lies were convincing. She fooled many people. I bear you no ill will. The dowager smiled. You're gracious. Adrian is fortunate. After the dowager left, Lady Margaret approached. Eleanor, may I speak with you privately? Eleanor glanced at Adrian, who nodded. The women moved to a quiet corner. Margaret took a breath. I need to apologize. I was one of Cordelia's sources. She asked me about you, and I repeated every negative thing I'd heard. I didn't realize she was using that information to poison Adrian against you. After the dowager left, Lady Margaret approached. Eleanor, may I speak with you privately? Eleanor glanced at Adrian, who nodded. The women moved to a quiet corner. Margaret took a breath. I need to apologize. I was one of Cordelia's sources. She asked me about you, and I repeated every negative thing I'd heard. I didn't realize she was using that information to poison Adrian against you. Margaret looked relieved. You're not angry? Eleanor shook her head. I'm disappointed, but I understand. Society runs on gossip. We all participate in it to some degree. The real villain here is Cordelia, who deliberately created false narratives. Everyone else just repeated what they'd heard. Margaret's expression turned fierce. Cordelia will pay for this. I'll make sure of it. She won't be welcome in our circles anymore. Eleanor's voice was firm. That's not necessary. Cordelia's lies have been exposed. Her reputation is already damaged. Let that be enough. I don't want to be the kind of person who destroys others out of revenge, even when they deserve it. Margaret looked at her with new respect. You're kinder than I would be. Lord Christopher found Adrian near the end of the evening. Well, brother, you managed not to completely ruin things. I'm impressed. Adrian laughed. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Christopher's expression grew serious. I meant what I said earlier. Eleanor is special. If you hurt her, if you go back to treating her poorly once the excitement of tonight wears off, I'll side with her, family or not. Adrian was surprised. Christopher rarely took stands like this. I understand. And, Christopher, thank you for warning Eleanor, for giving her a chance to prepare. You're a better man than I am. Christopher smiled. I wouldn't go that far. But I am a better judge of character. Always have been. Adrian couldn't disagree. The morning after the engagement ball, Adrian woke early. He couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor, about how completely wrong he'd been, about how close he'd come to destroying any chance of happiness in their marriage, about how, despite everything, she'd given him a second chance. He needed to prove he deserved it. Adrian called for his secretary. I need you to arrange something. Lady Eleanor mentioned she loves languages and books. Find out what her favorite authors are. Then purchase first editions of their complete works. Also send word to Madame Laurent. I want Eleanor to have a complete wardrobe. Cost is irrelevant. Quality matters. His secretary nodded, making notes. Adrian was just getting started. That afternoon, Adrian called on Eleanor at her father's townhouse. He was nervous, which was unusual for him. A footman showed him to the drawing room where Eleanor waited. She wore a simple day dress in pale green. Her hair was arranged simply. She looked beautiful but less dramatic than the previous night. More herself, Adrian suspected. Your Grace, Eleanor greeted him formally. Adrian bowed. Lady Eleanor, thank you for receiving me. I know it's improper to call so soon after last night, but I wanted to see you. Eleanor's lips twitched. To make sure I wasn't a dream, that I'm actually as remarkable as you claimed. Adrian laughed. Something like that. May I sit? Eleanor gestured to a chair. Please. Adrian sat, suddenly uncertain how to begin. Eleanor watched him with amusement. "You're nervous, that's oddly endearing." Adrian smiled ruefully. "I've never courted anyone before. All my previous attachments were either casual affairs or political maneuvering. This is new territory." Eleanor tilted her head. "And what is this exactly?" Adrian met her eyes. "An attempt to build something real, to get to know my future wife, to let her get to know me, to prove I'm more than the arrogant ass who dismissed her without meeting her." Eleanor's smile was small. "That's a low bar to clear." Adrian's laugh was surprised. "You're right, it is. Let me raise it. I want to be worthy of you. I want to be a husband you're proud of." Eleanor's expression softened. "That's better. So Duke Adrian Blackthorne, tell me about yourself. Not the public version. The real you. What do you love? What do you fear? What keeps you awake at night?" Adrian was taken aback. No one ever asked him such direct, personal questions. "That's quite a question." Eleanor smiled. "You said you wanted to build something real. Real requires honesty. I'm giving you permission to be honest with me, to show me who you are beneath the title and the expectations." Adrian took a breath. "All right. Honestly? I fear being irrelevant. I inherited immense power and wealth. But what have I done with it? I've fulfilled obligations, managed estates, but I haven't made a difference, haven't mattered." Eleanor leaned forward. "What would making a difference look like to you?" Adrian hadn't expected the question, hadn't expected anyone to take his half-formed fears and turn them into something concrete. I don't know exactly. Something that helps people, changes lives. The Ravenswood estates employ hundreds, feed thousands, but it feels like maintaining the status quo, not improving anything." Eleanor's eyes sparkled with interest. "What if you reformed your estate management, implemented better working conditions, fair wages, education for workers' children? You have the power to make those changes. That would be making a difference." Adrian stared at her. "I'd never thought of that, of using my position to actually improve lives rather than just maintaining them." Eleanor smiled. "That's because you've been surrounded by people who tell you what you want to hear, who don't challenge you. You need someone who will push you to be better, to do better." Adrian felt something click into place. "Someone like you." Eleanor's smile widened. "Someone exactly like me. I'm not interested in being a decorative duchess. I want to matter too. If we're going to be married, if we're going to be partners, then let's actually partner. Use our combined resources and influence to do something meaningful." Adrian felt excitement building. "You're talking about real social reform." Eleanor nodded. "I'm talking about changing the world, starting small, with your estates, but thinking big. Why not?" Adrian found himself grinning. "Why not indeed, Eleanor? Has anyone ever told you you're dangerous?" Eleanor laughed. "Dangerous how?" Adrian leaned forward. "You make me want to be better, to do more, to challenge everything I've accepted as normal. That's terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure." Eleanor's expression grew serious. "Adrian, I'm not interested in changing you, in fixing you. You're not broken. But I am interested in being a partner who challenges you, who doesn't let you settle for less than you're capable of. Can you handle that? Because many men say they want a strong partner, but what they really want is someone who makes them feel strong by comparison." Adrian considered the question seriously. "I honestly don't know. I've never been in a relationship with someone who challenged me, but I'd like to try. And if I struggle with it, if my pride gets in the way, or I revert to arrogant behavior, I need you to call me out. Don't let me get away with it." Eleanor studied him. "You're serious? You actually want me to challenge you?" Adrian nodded. "Last night showed me how badly I need it. I've been operating in an echo chamber. People telling me what I want to hear, agreeing with my opinions, never pushing back. It's made me lazy and arrogant. I don't want to be that man anymore." Eleanor extended her hand. "Then let's make a deal. I'll challenge you, you'll challenge me. We'll push each other to be better." Adrian took her hand. "Deal. Now tell me about you. What keeps you awake at night?" Eleanor's smile faded slightly. "Wasted potential. I spent 3 years hiding myself, making myself smaller. Those are 3 years I'll never get back. 3 years of growth, learning, connection that I sacrificed to make other people comfortable. I'm angry about that. At myself for hiding. At the world for making me feel like I had to. Adrian squeezed her hand. You're not hiding anymore. Eleanor met his eyes. No, I'm not, and I never will again. Whatever our marriage becomes, I'm going to be fully myself. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's something you'll have to work through. I won't shrink for anyone ever again. Adrian's voice was fierce. Good, don't, Eleanor, promise me something. If I ever make you feel like you need to hide yourself, tell me immediately. Don't suffer in silence. Don't make yourself smaller. Call me out and I'll fix it. Eleanor looked surprised. You really mean that? It wasn't a question. Adrian nodded. I really do. Last night taught me that I'm capable of being blind and stupid, of believing lies because they're convenient. I need you to keep me honest, to make sure I'm seeing reality, not just what I want to see. Eleanor's expression softened. You're different than I expected. Adrian smiled wryly. The arrogant Duke had depth? Shocking. Eleanor laughed. Something like that. They talked for hours, about books, politics, philosophy, dreams. Adrian learned that Eleanor wanted to write, that she'd been keeping journals for years but never shared them with anyone, that she had opinions on estate management, education reform, and women's rights that were radical and brilliant. Eleanor learned that Adrian was deeply insecure beneath his arrogant facade, that he'd lost his father young and felt he could never measure up, that he loved music but couldn't carry a tune, that he had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he felt safe. By the time Adrian left, something had shifted. They weren't strangers forced into marriage anymore. They were two people discovering they might actually like each other. The 3 weeks before the wedding flew by. Adrian courted Eleanor properly. They took walks in the park, attended the theater, had long dinners where they discussed everything from literature to politics. Adrian introduced Eleanor to his friends, real friends, not social acquaintances, and was gratified when they all genuinely liked her. Christopher and Eleanor became close. Margaret warmed to her future sister-in-law. Even the dowager admitted Eleanor was surprisingly suitable. Cordelia tried to spread more rumors, but this time no one listened. Her credibility was destroyed. She left London in disgrace. Adrian felt no sympathy. She'd earned her fate. Christopher and Eleanor became close. Margaret warmed to her future sister-in-law. Even the dowager admitted Eleanor was surprisingly suitable. Cordelia tried to spread more rumors, but this time no one listened. Her credibility was destroyed. She left London in disgrace. Adrian felt no sympathy. She'd earned her fate. 1 week before the wedding, Adrian took Eleanor to Ravenswood Estate, the main country house where they'd live after the marriage. The property was magnificent. Rolling hills, ancient forests, a house that had stood for 3 centuries. Eleanor fell in love immediately. It's beautiful, she breathed. Adrian watched her explore the grounds with childlike wonder. It's yours now, or will be in a week. Make whatever. Changes you want. Eleanor turned to him. What if I want to turn the East Wing into a school for the estate workers' children? Adrian smiled. Then we'll build a school. Eleanor, I meant what I said. We're partners. Your dreams matter as much as mine. Eleanor's eyes glistened. Thank you. That evening they sat in Ravenswood's library. Eleanor was examining the extensive collection of books. Adrian, this is incredible. Some of these are first editions, incredibly rare. Adrian watched her reverently handle a centuries-old volume. They're yours too, all of it, the house, the books, the land. Adrian took her hands. I'm not giving up control, I'm sharing it. There's a difference. Eleanor, in the past 3 weeks I've learned something. I'm better with you than without you. Smarter, more thoughtful, more ambitious in the right ways. You make me want to be worthy of standing beside you. That's not a loss of control, that's growth. Eleanor's eyes searched his. Adrian, are you falling in love with me? The question was direct, like everything about Eleanor. Adrian's heart pounded. Yes, I am. I didn't expect to. I didn't plan to. But Eleanor, you're extraordinary. How could I not fall in love with you? Eleanor smiled slowly. Good, because I'm falling in love with you too. Adrian's breath caught. You are? Eleanor nodded. I fought it at first. Didn't want to give you the satisfaction. But Adrian, the man you've been these past 3 weeks, honest, vulnerable, ambitious to do good, that's a man I can love. That's a man I want to build a life with. Adrian pulled her closer. Can I kiss you? Eleanor's laugh was breathless. We're getting married in a week. I think kissing is permissible. Adrian smiled. Just checking. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When their lips met, it was gentle at first, tentative. Then Eleanor's hand slid into his hair and the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Wow, Eleanor whispered. Adrian laughed. Yeah, wow. The wedding day arrived. Eleanor stood in her childhood bedroom dressed in cream silk and lace. Her father helped her with her veil, tears in his eyes. You look beautiful, my dear. Your mother would be so proud. Eleanor hugged him. Papa, thank you for arranging this marriage. I know you were desperate. I know you didn't expect it to turn into something real. But it did. Her father smiled. Adrian Blackthorne is a fortunate man. I hope he knows that, Eleanor laughed. He does now. He didn't 3 weeks ago, but we got there eventually. They went to the church. Eleanor walked down the aisle on her father's arm, and at the altar, Adrian waited, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. The ceremony was beautiful, traditional vows spoken with genuine feeling. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Adrian kissed Eleanor with a tenderness that made several guests tear up. The reception was joyful. Dancing, laughter, toasts. Christopher gave a speech about how his brother had been an idiot, but Eleanor had knocked sense into him. Everyone laughed, including Adrian. The dowager formally welcomed Eleanor to the family. Margaret promised to be a better sister-in-law than she'd been a future one. By the end of the evening, Eleanor was exhausted but happy. This was her life now, Duchess of Ravenswood. Wife to a man she actually loved. It was more than she'd ever dared hope for. That night in their chambers at Ravenswood Estate, Adrian helped Eleanor with her elaborate hairpins. Thank you, she murmured, for everything, for apologizing, for courting me properly, for falling in love with me. Adrian kissed her temple. Thank you for giving me a second chance, for not writing me off as a lost cause. Eleanor turned to face him. Adrian, can I tell you something? About that night at the engagement ball? Adrian nodded. Eleanor smiled. I wasn't planning to look that beautiful. I was going to come in my usual plain dress, let you be disappointed, prove your assumptions right. But then Christopher warned me, told me you were planning to ignore me, and something in me rebelled. Adrian listened intently. Eleanor continued. I decided if I was going to be dismissed, I'd be dismissed for who I really am, not for some false version of myself. So I hired the best modiste, wore my mother's jewels, styled myself the way I'd always wanted to, but was too afraid. And I walked into that ballroom determined to show you exactly what you were dismissing. She paused. I wanted to make you regret your assumptions, and I did. But what I didn't expect was for you to admit you were wrong, to apologize publicly, to actually change. That took courage, real courage, and that's when I started falling for you. Adrian pulled her close. I'm glad I found that courage. Otherwise, I'd have lost you before I ever really had you. Eleanor rested her head on his chest. You know what the best part of this is? Adrian smiled. What? Eleanor looked up at him. We get to start our marriage already in love. Most arranged marriages take years to develop affection, if they ever do. But we did the hard work first, confronted our prejudices, learned who we really are, built a foundation of honesty and respect. Now we get to build everything else on top of that. Adrian kissed her forehead. You're right. We're starting from a place of strength, not obligation. Eleanor smiled. Exactly. And, Adrian, I have plans. So many plans. For the estate, for social reform, for changing the world, one small piece at a time. Adrian laughed. I'd expect nothing less. And so our story ends not with an ending, but a beginning. Duke Adrian Blackthorne learned a valuable lesson. Never judge someone based on gossip, lies, or assumptions. Always give people a chance to prove who they are. Eleanor Blackthorne, Duchess of Ravenswood, learned that being yourself, your full authentic self, is always better than hiding. That the right person will love you, not despite your strength, but because of it. Together they built a marriage that defied everyone's expectations, including their own. They reformed the Ravenswood estates, implementing fair wages and education for workers. They became known for their progressive policies and genuine partnership. Eleanor wrote extensively, publishing essays on education and women's rights under her own name. Adrian supported her publicly, proud to be married to a woman who challenged the status quo. They had 4 children, raised to value justice, education, and authentic self-expression. The Ravenswood name became synonymous not just with power and wealth, but with positive change. And it all started with one unforgettable entrance. One night when Eleanor refused to be dismissed, when she walked into a ballroom and demanded to be seen, when she made a duke realize that his assumptions had blinded him to extraordinary possibility. That night changed everything. This is Crown of Secrets, where we tell stories of people who refuse to accept others' limitations, who demand to be seen for who they really are, who turn arranged marriages into love stories through honesty, courage, and genuine connection. Eleanor and Adrian's story reminds us that first impressions can be catastrophically wrong, that the person you dismiss might be the most important person you'll ever meet. That prejudice blinds us to possibility, and that sometimes the best relationships are the ones that start with conflict and grow through mutual respect. Eleanor didn't win Adrian's love by being what he expected. She won it by being exactly herself. If you enjoyed this story of assumptions destroyed and love found, let us know in the comments. Should we tell more stories of arranged marriages that become real partnerships, of dukes who learn humility, of women who refuse to hide their brilliance? Your engagement determines what stories we tell next. Like, subscribe and turn on notifications for Crown of Secrets, because every crown hides a secret, every assumption hides a truth, and every unforgettable entrance hides a person tired of being underestimated. Thank you for joining us on Eleanor and Adrian's journey. Until next time, remember, never dismiss someone you haven't met. You might be dismissing your future.